Just a quick video to cover the slightly awkward transition of setting up kit, and I'm not flustered at all. Hello. Nice link with the last speaker. I'm going to be talking about 3D printing, and if I could be anything in the world, it would be a dark robot. Let me just go to full screen. There we go. Oh no. Let's try again. All right. Go away, sidebar. There we go. Okay. Sorry, a bit flustered, but what I'm going to be doing today is to create a live digital 3D sculpture with my kit there that I've just hurriedly set up. But first, I want to talk a little bit about my work, just to give it some context, and also sort of explain my route from analog to digital artist. So going back almost 20 years now, my first year of university, until this point, I'd always had two sketchbooks on the go. I had my proper fine art sketchbook, and I had this other sort of secret one which had all my comic artwork, really into comics, British, American, Japanese comics. But I always saw them as quite separate things. A year before I came to University of Manchester, I did a foundation course in London, and a friend I made there, a really brilliant artist called Ryo Okamoto from Japan, he was painting these sort of manga anime style pieces onto canvas, which back in 1996 was really exciting. But I kind of felt that was his thing, and I was doing my own thing. And it wasn't until about a year later when I went back to visit him in London, and I saw what he was doing with his work. And he still had the manga aesthetic, but it was really painterly, and I just absolutely loved it. And the penny kind of dropped, and it was my sort of first eureka moment, sort of creatively, that maybe I could do something similar without sort of stepping on his toes. And what I really liked, this really freed me up, this sort of the two sketchbooks becoming one. I felt I could use sort of comic iconography as metaphors for other things, and the sort of the cartoon aesthetic of bright colours and kind of cute graphics felt like a good counterbalance to some of the kind of slightly darker themes of the work. And also, alongside the sideline of the comic artwork, I've always been interested in digital artwork, and this is going back to the 80s, and my first memories are using a ZX Spectrum and a program where you literally painted one black pixel at a time using cursors, because there was no mouse, on a white background. But by the time I was at university, the design programs and the art packages were really powerful, and I decided to use those in my work as well, much to the dismay of my tutors. And what I like about the digital art process is the control you have over the image. You can have different elements on different layers. You can zoom in, zoom out, undo, and you can adjust the whole image in a way that you can't with paint. And I really like that sense of control. And also, it felt like I could kind of create more complex pieces and pieces that I absolutely couldn't achieve with paint. And around the same time, a chance sketch in my book, which to me seemed to be like a futuristic version of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and I suppose infinity, inspired this idea for a new body of work, which would sort of reimagine the Hindu pantheon in a sort of modern futuristic, my understanding of it. And the initial research phase was really exciting. I just loved the wealth of mythology and the imagery that came out of it. And as an artist, it was really potent to sort of derive artwork from. So I worked as a digital painter for a few years and had a few exhibitions with that stuff. But then I had a new idea for an exhibition which was going to focus on the Hindu artwork. The idea was a sort of a futuristic Hindu temple environment. But I wanted this to be populated with sculptures of the main Hindu gods. I didn't really have any experience with sculpture, so I started with what I knew, which seemed obvious: get some clay, get some wood, get some tools to make the armature, the skeleton. And I kind of loved it. After however many years of trying to make images two-dimensionally, suddenly I was just able to make them with my hands, and it felt really great. But ultimately, I was sort of struggling against. I felt like I was battling against it. The kind of the weight of the clay, gravity, the materials, and especially with Hindu gods with limbs going off in all directions. The amount of times this guy fell to pieces, I can't count. But anyway, so I then looked to the digital world for my solution to the sculptural problems, and straight away it felt like I'd had the solution. I could zoom in. I could literally go inside the sculpture and start sculpting in negative space. And it felt really exciting. And I could output as sort of 2D renders. But of course, the idea for this exhibition was sculptures. So this was an early look into the 3D print process. And what I loved about this process was I could spend all the time I needed working on these on my computer. So I could spend months on it. And then when it was ready, that would be a point where I gave it to the printers and the machines, and it would come out kind of perfectly. It was kind of almost weird having spent so long on these, sort of just looking at it on my screen, and they would arrive and they were perfect, pixel perfect. So that's another piece from that exhibition. And you may recognize this piece, the earlier digital painting and the kind of failed clay attempt. Yeah, so this felt like the final incarnation of that idea. And I should mention also that I've been picking up these new art forms, but I've never abandoned the previous ones. I still use paint and I still use clay. And around this time, I was kind of doing a lot of work at street art festivals, music festivals, where I would be creating live paintings alongside graffiti artists. And I started to use aerosol myself, and it was mainly a speed thing. Because what I remember mainly was I would be there at the end of the night, we'd have a day to make a painting, and I'd be there trying to finish it off with my brush, and all the graffiti artists were already in the pub. So I picked up aerosol, but obviously I grew to love the medium and use it more and more in my work. But I never felt like I was a graffiti artist. I kind of felt like I was a painter that used aerosol kind of incidentally. And but I did have this love of letters, and I did want to get into the graffiti thing, but I couldn't find a name, and that seems to be quite an important thing as a graffiti artist. So I was playing around with all my favourite letters and trying to jumble them around until they made sense, and then I came up with the idea for Kers, and the piece you saw at the beginning was a Kers car. I just grab a bit of water. And yeah, it had my favourite letters in it. Excuse me. But what I liked about the letters cursed was that it was a play on the word cursed, C-U-R-S-E-D. And this kind of tied in to some of the angsty themes of my earlier Kriksix work. But also, what came out of the name Kers was the idea for the art itself. And that would be that I would paint these Kers tags on rubbish or anything that was going to be thrown away. Thus, these objects were kind of cursed. It was kind of labeling them. And it was also this idea that I could probably do that legally. I could literally be stood in front of a policeman kind of going, I'm painting on rubbish, you know. But I did a couple of those, and it felt like the idea, you know, I'd already come to a head with the idea. So then I thought, well, what if we take aerosol out of the equation? And then the idea came to make a series of sort of environmental sculptures, I suppose, of graffiti tags made from things that were going to disperse. So that's a curse made out of leaves. I went to a primary school overnight, guerrilla style, with a bag of Lego and some little torches on my fingers, and made a cursed Lego, and then came back in the morning to watch the kids sort of take them apart and make new things until there was nothing left. And then you saw the making of the curse car and curse nibbles for the exhibition opening, which seemed to make sense. And then fast forwarding a few years, the work that I'd done previously led to some kind of quite tangential projects. This was an automated, interactive, 2-ton robotic transformer that sonically interacted with its audience. So you could play music to it, sing to her, I should say, or give her an MP3, and she would ingest the music and then play it back as sort of glitchy electronica. And we actually had a hidden musician who was doing the live sampling. And then my 3D work sort of took me into animation and video mapping. So this is a building. It's sort of 4 shots of the same building. And I sort of transformed it into, quite predictably, a baby god, demon, angel, robot thing, which is what I always do. And then, yeah, to my more recent work, I just realized you can't read any of the things, never mind. I got my first 3D printer last year, and the sort of new body of work I wanted to make, I wanted the theme to tie in with the nature of the process. So a lot of the work was about things coming out of things, of emergence. But then I kind of tied it in with my other interests, and you know, this idea of evolution, and sort of like I was looking at religious iconography, but also superhero iconography, which kind of similar in some ways, in terms of like that moment of enlightenment, or when the character gets their powers. And so this work was kind of weird in that the output I kind of wanted to put everything in there, so I was marrying all the art forms that I was using. So there's a 3D print in there, the photograph, painting, digital painting, and I wanted just to put it all together. And it's kind of in response to one of the concerns as a digital artist is you're very aware that your work has no value at all. You know, if you put 100 hours into a traditional painting, you can put that value onto the canvas. But I could spend the same amount of time on a digital painting, and the output is worth the paper it's printed on. And that's a concern, but what I liked about, you know, what I've had to come to the decision in the world of Instagram and memes and GIFs, which are all amazing sort of forms of art, creativity and expression, you know, that just to not care really, and that the output was the most important thing. I'm a terrible talker, so I'm going to actually do what I do best, which is do a 3D sculpture. So if you just bear with me a minute, and I will transition.